Local stories, local people. We're taking you inside Western Mass news. It's the Even Better Western Mass podcast with Dave Madsen.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Wherever you are, as we wind down the month of June, I do hope you're doing well. Well, something a bit different on this week's podcast. The East of the River Five-Town Chamber of Commerce recently held its first public breakfast gathering since the COVID-19 pandemic shut everything down about 15 months ago. Their featured speaker was legendary NFL quarterback Fran Tarkenton. The man known as the Mad Scrambler talked about doing business on and off the field. Tarkenton is a passionate advocate of small business and entrepreneurship. In fact, over the past 30-plus years, Fran has founded and built more than 20 successful companies, the largest reaching revenue of over $142 million. And at the age of 81, he has no intention of slowing down.
In February 3rd, turned 81. I've still got my fastball. I'm here working somewhere in my office or somewhere else every day. We're building businesses. We're trying to solve problems and trying to be good citizens. Let me first, as we get started, share something with you. I don't have all the answers in the world. I never have. Every time that I thought I had all the answers, I found out I didn't. Whatever success I've had in sports, and I played high school, I played baseball, football, and basketball. I played 4 years in high school football, 4 years in high school in the University of Georgia, won SEC championships in the College Hall of Fame, played 18 years in the National Football League, missed 5 games. And those 18 plus 4 in college and high school, I missed 5 games in all those years of playing. I was very lucky. And I want to share with you, I didn't have any original thoughts and don't today. Everything that I've accomplished is because of other people. Is because I learned great lessons from other people that were coaches, that were teammates, that were great business leaders. And I was open always to being coached. I wanted to be mentored. I still want to be coached because we're in a world that ever changing. Technology has taken over our world. You and I have to understand that. Not only do we have to understand that, we have to go take advantage of that. Everything changes at warp speed. Football. I never thought the NFL could ever get to the point that it is today. It's just unbelievable. And not only financially and business-wise, and it covers the world now. And the popularity of it is unbelievable. The dollars that these teams make and then the players make is unbelievable. It is a tremendous, tremendous success worldwide. Roger Goodell told me that I asked him at the Super Bowl down here in Atlanta a couple of years ago, I said, Roger, I've never gotten an international number of how many people watch the Super Bowl. And I said, I read that there are 125 million in America that will watch the Super Bowl. But how about the rest of the world? It's got to be a massive number, and all you got to do is just feed the game out to them. There's no other expense. You stream it out. And he said, in the rest of the world, we have over 200 million viewers of the Super Bowl. The stretch of it is the television. Now television is ABC, NBC, CBS, so forth, carry it, and ESPN. But now on Thursday night, Amazon is going to carry the Thursday night game, and they're going to stream the games all on many different platforms. It's innovation, it's creativity, it's leveraging technology. And if you and I are not, if we're still at the Conestoga stage point, we're going to struggle. So many of my friends in business have had their best years in the last year of the pandemic crisis. It's amazing. We have in our businesses here done that. We have learned to be more efficient. We have learned to leverage technology in a better way. And we have been better business partners than we've ever been before. But I think for me, the thing that has been the reason I've had some success is that I have been open to mentoring both as a football player and a business person, and I'm still open to mentoring. I do not have all the answers, but I ask a lot of questions. I want to know how technology works and how it can simplify our lives. And it's the most exciting time in business I've ever had. There's always a correlation for me and for many people between athletics and business. I look at leadership. I've got a picture I'm going to hold up here for you. Maybe you might be able to see it. It's a picture of Mike Ditka, Fran Tarkenton, and Sam Walton, taken many, many years ago. Sam Walton was one of my mentors. He was my friend. He was a simple man. He didn't go to college. He worked for J.C. Penney. And then he finally had the idea for Walmart. And after he got the idea for Walmart, he went to Montgomery Ward, Sears Roebuck, J.C. Penney, and say, I've got an idea, which was the Walmart, and none of them, they threw him out. He started by himself in Bentonville, Arkansas. And he made it into the biggest company in the world. And it still thrives and still goes far after his death. He was a guy that was an ultimate leader. I would go to his store openings all over the country, and he would walk the floors. He'd want me to walk the floors with him. And he would talk to the supervisors, he'd talk to the workers, and he never looked down at any of them. He didn't lecture any of them. He asked them, how you doing? What can I do to help you? What products are selling? What products aren't? What can we change to make it all better for you? And he has someone going down the aisle with you taking notes. Every Saturday, he had a meeting that he spun out. Technology could do it back then, even then. And he would have a meeting, and all the officers and supervisors in Bentonville came to the meeting, lasted a half a day, and he would share his ideas, listen to them on what they were doing. He had one day he was there, he said, we got a breakage problem. In other words, someone stealing products in the stores and not paying for them. And our breakage used to be about 0.5%. Now it's gone up to 1%. And that means so many millions of dollars to us. And we need to really solve this problem. And I've got Jake right here, and he's going to gather your thoughts. And I want to get your thoughts of all the people here and all the people listening through the video across the country on how we can improve this and how we can get it back to a more stable 0.5% rather than that 1%. He led. People worked for him. They played hard for him. And without all that, his leadership, they don't have the success they have. I think most business people don't understand that. It's about me. I'm going to yell, scream. Back in the early days of football, in my high school days in the 50s and college days and pro days in the 60s, people yelled and screamed and, just knocked you down. Didn't build you up. But there was a few coaches who did. And those coaches won. Leadership is the separation of people successful, I think, as entrepreneurs running big businesses, being coaches, being quarterbacks. The hardest thing in football for someone to understand is how do I pick a quarterback? Nick Saban's a great friend of mine. We have houses up at Lake Burton in North Georgia, and we spend a lot of time together up there in the summertime and have many dinners, and we talk. And we both said he, nor me, nor Bill Belichick, nor Vince Lombardi had the ability or has the ability to be able to look at film, watch somebody practice, and say, this guy's going to be great. Well, you say, well, no. Belichick had Brady. He drafted Brady. He was the 199th person drafted in his class. How many quarterbacks were drafted before him? I don't know, but a bunch of them. He was drafted in the 6th round out of Michigan. And Michigan had a great program in the Big Ten and a great coach there. And the guy never did embrace Brady's play. He started him a little bit here and a little bit there, but not much. He went to the combine and, you know, they want to see how high you can jump and how fast you can run and how far you can throw the football. That's got some importance, but it's not the most important thing of a quarterback. A quarterback has got to be your general. He's got to push the right buttons. Even though you got people calling plays from the sideline, he might change those plays. And needs to change the plays. He needs to call the different blocking formations for his offensive line, depending upon the blitz of the defense. And then he does the same for his receivers, depending upon zone coverage, man coverage, whatever it might be. It takes a lot of thinking. But the biggest thing for a quarterback, you gotta depend on you don't play well without your offensive lineman playing well. You don't play well without receivers playing well. You don't play well without your defense getting you the ball back and get you good field position. It takes all of that, and you're the centerpiece. And if you don't have all that it factor, and you don't know how to lead and have these people and own that locker room and have these people really want to play for you because you're the highest paid, most looked at player and the most important player because you're pulling the buttons, making the plays. And the great quarterbacks, you can't measure them by their arm strength, by how high they could jump. Tom Brady was a skinny guy. Goes through the combine. Nobody thought he had a great arm, average arm, ran the 40 in about 6 minutes, jumped about this high. But he had that thing inside of him, that chip inside of his head, his heart and soul, that he could go out and lead and players would play hard for him. Every quarterback that I've known, you go back to John Unitas. John Unitas was drafted in the 9th round by, I'm not even sure who, I think Pittsburgh, maybe. They cut him. He was a free agent. Every team could have had John Unitas for $100 pay. Baltimore, finally in his 2nd year, picked him up. He was on the bench, and quarterback got hurt, and John Unitas became as great a quarterback as the world has ever seen. Joe Montana, 3rd round draft choice. I was a 3rd round draft choice. 6 quarterbacks were ahead of me. And I broke every passing record there was in my 18 years. My records stood for 17 years before Marino broke the records. Peyton Manning stayed for 3 years. It wasn't because of me. In fact, I played with a broken shoulder most of my career. I got a separation when I was a junior in college, and I could throw the ball 75 yards before that, and after that I couldn't throw it more than 50 yards. Didn't matter. I understood how to play. I didn't invent how to play. I learned it from everybody else. I had mentors. Y.A. Tuttle was my mentor. John Unitas was my mentor. My biggest mentor was Sid Luckman, who's a lot older than me, but I went and visited with these Hall of Fame players to get them to teach me and mentor me and coach me on how to play. I couldn't have done it if I wasn't open to that. And it's something in business that I also understand. It's not about me. It's about my customer. It's about my business partners that many are so younger than me, obviously, 25 years old, 30 years old, technology proficient. They know so much more than I do about all that. And I want to listen and hear and bring my experience in to get the best out of them. As a quarterback, you get the best out of your teammates. I'm going to give you a story that's a true story that happened this last year. It tells the whole story. It's had a profound impact on my life at 81 years old because I'm still learning at a fast pace. Tom Brady was, as you know, went to Tampa Bay. Big controversy. Tampa Bay weren't doing very well. They won one Super Bowl 100 years ago. it seems, and they get Brady in. And Tom Brady comes in with the pandemic. They couldn't practice like they used to practice. They didn't have, so they had to do it remotely. And so anyway, when he came into the camp, think about this. How intimidated was the head coach? How intimidated was the offensive coordinator? You got the GOAT. You got the greatest quarterback that's ever played. And he walks in there, and you're the offensive coordinator, and the offensive coordinator was a guy, and still is, Byron Leftwich. Byron Leftwich is 5 years younger than Tom Brady. Byron Leftwich was an average player, wasn't a star player, didn't start all the time. And he was the offensive coordinator. You know what Brady did? Met him the first day and looked at Byron Leftwich in the eye and said, Byron, I want you to coach me. Can you imagine the reaction of Byron, I want you to coach me. I want you to help me. And you and I work together to get the best out of these players that we have, because we cannot win just with me or you or whoever else it might be. Teams win. Individuals don't. My early years, I did a lot of work with CEOs of large companies, biggest companies in the world. Many of them had egos up here. They didn't reach down here. They were up on the 50th floor of the thing, and they didn't get down on the ground with the people. They didn't interface with the people. They weren't about mentoring. They weren't about coaching. It was about, stock options and make a number for the quarter and da-da-da. And they lost the connection. But the people in business like Sam Walton that have had unbelievable success had the same notion that Tom Brady had. Sam Walton would ask me questions. Can you imagine? About business, about this and about that, and how to correlate between. He asked more questions than I could imagine, but that's why he was great. Great leaders don't pretend to know all the answers. Great leaders understand, I cannot scale my company. I cannot scale myself by doing everything myself, making all the decisions. I need teams. I need people, and they need to believe in me. I need to own the locker room. How many teams are there today? 32, 34, 36 teams, something like that. How many quarterbacks own the locker room? Maybe 5. In my generation, this generation, not any different. Hard to pick these people because they go to the combine to see how far they can throw the ball, how high they can jump, how they do on their mental test. And that's what they do. And they miss and they miss and they miss and they miss. This year, they had 5 or 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. They'll be lucky to have one of those quarterbacks really be a great quarterback. And so it's a correlation between that. But isn't it a great thing? For me, it's a great thing. At 81, I don't have all the answers. No. These kids that work around here, they're so smart. They're so great. The technology, they're in here, and I tell them when they come here, I come in here and sit down and tell me what you know. Help me think through how we can be better partners, how we can help our customers, how we can get more customers, and how can we help them solve problems. My focus as a quarterback was on my teammates. My focus in business is on my customers and on my teammates. Do we win all the time? We do not. Do we make mistakes? We do. And do I ask a lot of questions? I ask a lot of questions. I wrote a book about you don't learn from winning, you learn from failure. You can't have failure if you don't try. And to be able to say, this doesn't work. Why? Let's change. That's just common sense. But so many of us don't do it because we'll lose some stature with our people. And the other thing is, I played all those years, 26 years, high school, college, and pro. I never chewed out a teammate, not one. You think I threw a pass and they ran a wrong route, that he tried to run a wrong route? That my offensive tackle who got beat by Deacon Jones and he sacked me, that he didn't try? You know, it's hard to lead if you're going to be nothing but critical. If you're going to chew people out all day long and make them scared of you and make them scared to talk, scared to play. I involved my teammates in everything I did. My offensive line, Ranieri, can you get me a yard? We got 3rd and 1. I need a yard. Can you give it to me or not? Or yeah. Well, can I run inside or outside of you? He tell me. I call the play. We didn't make it every time. We made it a lot of times. He knew more about what he could do than I did. Same thing with Ahmad Rashad and wide receiver. You kind of talk and involve your people. I don't like bosses. I don't like bosses. I'm not the boss around here, Mike. I have 5 companies here. We've done very, very well. And we're doing better every day. I'm not the boss. I'm their partner. And they can come in here and talk to me anytime they want to. I want them to. I want to hear what they say. I want to get what their mind is, what's on their mind. They're touching our customers. They're touching our people. They're seeing them fail and they're seeing them win. How can we help them do that? How can we be better partners, better so forth? Bottom line, we'll take some questions here is it's a great time to be in business. Oh no, the world's falling apart and we got this. Yes, we do. We got 8 zillion, all kind of problems. But we also, with this pandemic, have learned how to be more efficient in how we go about our business. We've got more technology companies that have come out and done things. DoorDash. You know, they deliver food to your door from restaurants around town. Didn't change the restaurants. Deliver it in cars, come to your door. Convenience. Built a business. Well, look at what we're doing here today. I do 6 to 7 Zooms every day. I don't have to get on the plane and go to New York and Boston and California, and they don't have to come here. I can do it right here, and we can have a time to share with each other. Great opportunities. And I don't plan to slow down anytime soon. It's a lot of fun to go out and help people solve problems and do better. And that's our mission of business. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might, and just fire away.
And this is Paul. I'm going to kick it off with the first question is, what was your first thought when you learned that you were going back to the Vikings?
Well, it was an interesting thing. I was at the Vikings and I went to New York, and the reason I went to New York is Norm Van Brocklin was my coach, and I just had no respect for him. It couldn't work, and I told him, I said, you need to go, either trade me or either I'm going to retire at 25. And he tried to get me, but I didn't. So he got fired and then they tried to get me to come back to Minnesota. But I went to New York. In New York, you know, I really love playing in New York. And I played for Ali Sherman mostly in New York. And I went there and they traded 3 number 1 draft horses and 2 number 2 draft horses for me to come to New York. And they had a record of 112-1 the year before I got there. And the quarterback was Earl Morrow, who's a good player. I mean, he ends up being in the Super Bowl, replacing Unitas when Joe Willie Namath won the Super Bowl. He went down on the undefeated season of the Miami Dolphins with Don Shula, and he was the quarterback because Bob Greasy got hurt. But we just didn't have the personnel at New York. They didn't have the organization and so forth to really build. And I was there 5 years and played my best football there. And I went to Wellington Mayor and said, Wellington, you know, we don't have enough players here. And you could probably get more players for me and probably have a better chance to win if you had 4 or 5 more players that can play, and you probably could get that from anybody. I didn't know he was going to trade me to the Vikings, but I said, he said to me, don't you want to play for the New York Football Giants? I said, yes, I love playing in New York, but I won't have a chance I played 11 years in the National Football League. I played on the expansion team in Minnesota. Here we had a rebuilding team here, and I want a chance to be on a team that has a chance to play for a championship. And so he was a great man. And so he traded me back to the Vikings. They had the Purple People Eaters. They had Bud Grant. They had all the pieces. And we won 6 straight division championships, won 3 out of 4 we didn't win. We played in 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. Ran out of time in those Super Bowls. But it was a tremendous time for me, an exciting time for me to go back and play for my original team and play for Bud Grant, who was, in the Hall of Fame of coaching. It couldn't have been better.
Hi, Fran. Barry Sanborn, fellow entrepreneur and a lifelong coach as well with various sports, soccer and basketball. And just had a question. Do you still hang out with your teammates, Purple People Eaters, and who was the greatest receiver you ever played with?
That's all good questions. I live in Atlanta, and our guys, after we go, they're scattered all over the place. But a lot of our guys stay in Minnesota. But of course, for the years you're playing, you're there with them 24/7, and they become your brothers. And then you go out. I'm down here in Atlanta, and my teammates are the kids that work with me around. Do I stay in touch? Yes. Do all of them? Impossible. But we have a Zoom about once every 2 or 3 months, and we the guys of certain eras that my era of football in Minnesota, we get together with that. Ahmad Rashad is probably my best ongoing friend. He lives down in Florida. He's phenomenal, great receiver. He was my greatest receiver I ever had. There's a whole bunch of stories there about how we got, Ahmad, but Ahmad was just great, still is great, one of the great human beings that ever lived. His name was Bobby Moore when he played in college, and he changed his name to Ahmad Rashad, and people thought, well, he was a radical Muslim, and we got that, and he got kicked around the leg, and we got him off waivers from the Seattle Seahawks, and we gave him a rebirth, and he was unbelievable, terrific talent, great human being, and the best receiver I ever threw to.
Hey, Fran, Justin Roberts here from Country Bank. Thanks so much for taking the time today. My question for you, you played a few years ago, a couple years before I was born. But if you were to play in today's day and age, what do you think your numbers would be like today, knowing that you can't really hit the quarterback now?
Well, as quarterbacks, we think we can do anything. So I'm very close to Mike Zimmer, the coach at Minnesota. I talk to him a lot, and I talk to the team a lot. And so I told Zimmer, I said, Zimmer, if I played in today's offense where you can't hit the quarterback, you got 5 wide receivers who could run, they could run about 4.5 40s. The speed you have, the way to spread out the field, you cannot knock the receivers down, cannot touch the quarterback. I said, I would have never been off the field. He'd have never gotten me off the field. But one thing that's been kind of fun for me to watch, and I admire these players so much. In my day, it was pocket quarterback, and I kind of broke the rules. I went out and I ran, but I didn't run just to make yards running. I ran to be able to buy time to let my receivers get open, and they called it scrambling. And when Dan Marino broke my record after, as I said, held my records of most yards passing, most touchdown passes, most things. And the reporter said, God, I didn't know that you had all these records because you were a scrambler. They didn't understand that the reason I scrambled was to buy time to be able to throw the ball. And I set all those records, and I threw out of the pocket, but I also got out of the pocket. And the byproduct of positivity, it was picking up a first down here, now was good. And I think now you're seeing that come back. Russell Wilson plays like I played. Patrick Mahomes played like I played. And so you're the kid playing at Buffalo is a big kid, and he's got great arm, but he's got mobility. It's a great advantage for the quarterbacks today to have mobility because the game is faster. And if you're just stuck as a pocket quarterback, it's hard to play. Tom Brady, and I think Drew Brees, and I think Peyton Manning, who just retired 3 or 4, I think we won't see those people again. It's too hard to do what they're doing. Brady's still doing it. It's amazing, but it's too hard. It's going to be, the quarterback's going to have to throw, but he's got to be mobile.
Hey, friend, Charlie Epstein, fellow entrepreneur. I have 2 questions. One, most athletes don't make the transition, I should say super transition from sports to business. So my first question is, while you were still playing football, were you also pursuing business so that, you know, you had that launch pad? And what was that launch pad for you? And then my second question is, and I love this at 81, that you still have the passion. What keeps the fire burning for you?
Okay. Good. If I could still play football at 81, I would have the passion to play. I don't think I could.
I'll be your defensive end, you know.
But you know, your question again that you wanted to know.
Well, so if you go back to when you were at the peak, right? You were playing in the championship games.
I got it. I got it.
What was the business transition?
Okay, that's a fair question. Nick Saban, again, I'll say it again, is as great a coach as has ever been. He and Belichick are great friends. They've both been the greatest head coaches in football, pro football and college football. And so about 3 years ago, there's no lights on the lake, and he's over at my house, and I'm walking into his boat. And he said to me, "Why didn't you go into coaching?" I said, "Well, I was already in business. I had learned, you know, I had a paper route, proverbial paper route when I was 7 years old. Every off season I'm working, I'm building businesses. I made more money in the off seasons in business than I ever made in football. My first salary was $12,500. I had a lifelong love of business as well as sports. And to be a great athlete, whether you're a golfer, baseball player, you got to start as a kid. You start as a kid, you learn. And I did that as football. But I also started as a kid with having a paper route and learning business. And I made $12,500 my first year. In 18 years, my total income was $1.2 million. I worked every offseason. I worked when I was in high school. I worked when I was in college. I worked when I was a kid, delivering newspapers in Washington, D.C. and Athens, Georgia. And the only way you can learn to be a quarterback is to play football all your life. The only way I can learn to be a great golfer like Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods, you got to play it all your life. The only way, to have that success in business, if you go and retire at 39, 35, 36, or 40, and you haven't been in business at all, you have no chance. So so he tells me that, and I said, "Nick, when did you start coaching?" He said, "When I was 22 years old." If I'd have got into coaching at 39 or 40 when I finished pro football, I could never catch up to you. You knew more about coaching than I did. But on the other hand, you couldn't catch up to me in business because I started when I was a kid. And so it's just not a magical thing. You throw it up there and I'm going to be great. And today, the athletes today, they come in here and by the droves, because we have a lot of athletes playing today, and they want to come and, how did you do it? And how do you do it? You got to go work at it. The only way to learn business is to do business. The only way to learn football is to go play football. And with Saban, as I told him, I said, "You have a 20-year head start. I couldn't have caught you. But in business, you can't catch me because you've never started." And the problem with all these players, they're making tons of money and everybody, well, they got all the money they want. Well, I don't know if anybody's ever had all the money they want, including Sam Walton. I asked Sam Walton one day, I said, "Sam," I didn't say Sam, I said, "Mr. Sam." I said, "When do you stop? When's it enough?" He says, "Never." I said, "What do you mean never?" He said, "I wake up every morning. I worry about nobody's gonna come to my store. They go to find another store they're going to go to. And I have that sense of desperation every morning that I wake up. I understand that. Every morning that I wake up, I have this sense of desperation. Is someone going to pass us by? Are we being creative and innovative enough? Are we a good enough business partner? Are we, you know, I have the same thing. I have you. It's not fear of failure. It's the reality that just because you were good yesterday doesn't mean you're good tomorrow. You got to reinvent yourself, and keep going. But if you start at 40 years old after you retired, it'd be hard for Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, or anybody else to be successful in business because they've had to play football 12 months a year and haven't had the luxury that I had of being able to build businesses while I was playing. That makes sense?
It does. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Fran. My name is Carmina Fernandez. I'm an entrepreneur. He just stole my thunder because all the questions up until now is all about football. And while I like football, my football is a little different than your football because they call it soccer for some reason here. And I really wanted to get more into your business, your experience in business. What made you go into financials? Was it because you made a lot of money in football, or what? Why financials? What are some wisdom that you can give us about scaling up? And what are some of the other businesses that you mentioned you're in?
Well, first of all, I'm not a financial guru. I manage my own money in the market, but you know, in our financial world, we're really selling insurance products, and so that's where we are there, and so we also I started a business 20 years ago called GoSmallBiz.com, and one of my cohorts, he happens to be a lawyer. He's still here with me in my account. Said 20 years ago, we ought to go out and work with small business people to give them more tools and knowledge to be able to make it so they don't get any help. I didn't know what a small business was. I really didn't. I found out, and they had no help. I didn't know how many there were. There are 30 million small businesses in this country, you know, 1 to 25 employees. And so we started plugging along, quite frankly, to be able to give them access to knowledge and information and tools to help them do a little bit better. And we helped, but we didn't have the capacity to help them as much as we do today. We've launched this week with Google. After a year and a half, we've been working with Google for a year and a half, and that hadn't been an easy thing. But I said earlier, you got to have partners. You got to have great partners. And Google has 95% of the search in the world. But they couldn't make it work in small businesses because the small business person needs help on how to leverage and use the Google technology. And so we did a test for about 3 months with Google on this and found out that was the truth. So we're now launching out so we can go out to small business America. We can give them the help. We can give them platform to be able to go out and do digital marketing, and we can target, retarget. We can limit it to, you know, their space of a mile radius in Atlanta or Boston or wherever, or a larger area. And we've launched this out, and it's this week. And so to be successful in business, you got to have revenue. To have revenue, you got to have a customer. Lead systems have been big in the insurance industry. None of them work. How do you get a customer? How do you not? Radio doesn't work. Television is too expensive. Billboards don't work. Lead systems don't work. And so now we've tapped into a company that's got 95% of the search. Are we going to make it work? I don't know. But we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, because you just don't slap it on the wall and make it work. So it's constantly doing that. But I'll say this also, young lady. I'm glad you got up here. 65% of my business partners here, they're not my employees, they're my business partners, happen to be women. I think that the most unappreciated part of the of the business in the world I've been in is how good women are in business. And you guys, I'm so happy. I know you've got families and, you know, all the stuff, and I admire and respect all that. We've got more women here than we have males. Not that males are terrible people, but the talent of you women is just made my business much, much better. And I think it makes American business much, much better. So there.
My name's Kelly McGivern. I first want to say that my dad raised me a Giants fan because of you. You were his first hero at 10 years old watching you on TV. But I got an easy question for you. I want to know if it bothers you and Jerry Burns that you are not credited with the West Coast offense.
How about that? Well, the West Coast offense, Bill Walsh was a phenomenal football coach. You know, he coached under some great coaches. He had great mentors. Paul Brown, who was the great coach of the Cleveland Browns in the 40s and 50s. And I can make a defense that Paul Brown was the most creative, great coach in the history of coaching. But it's not important. He was great. Belichick's great. You know, I really think that it's West Coast offense that Bill Walsh does get credit, and he should get credit. But the real story is this. I'm in New York Giants, and I was taller than both offensive tackles. And I love my team. We didn't have the talent, but Y.A. Tittle, the great Hall of Fame quarterback for the 49ers before he came back to the Giants, he played for the Giants 3 or 4 years. And he was one of the great human beings of all time, one of the greatest players of all time. And so he'd come back. He was successful in the insurance business in San Francisco, and he'd come back to training camp. And he'd be there for 6 weeks of training camp. And I had more fun with him, and he taught me more. So one year he comes back, he says, you know, Dick Nolan has come from Tom Landry program in Dallas, and he's now going to be the head coach or something at San Francisco. And I also spent time with the 49ers, and he brought in what Tom Landry was doing, and it was pretty much the West Coast offense, spreading the field. He even used the shotgun. I never used the shotgun, but it was short passes, use the tight end, throw to your backs, da-da-da-da-da. And so I said, well, show me what he's doing. And we spent hours and hours on the blackboard. And it was just made so much sense because you didn't have to have a great offensive line because we used the tight end, we used the running backs, we've hit small passes, short passes, this pass, spread the field out, sometimes get 3 receivers out, and we would get them all in before we throw the ball down the field, but we made first downs, it became our extended running play. And that was the format. I then took that to Minnesota and integrated into the offense there. And Jerry Burns was the offensive coordinator, and he was receptive to having that, and he added to that. And when I didn't play, my backup would come in and have great days. Because it was a simple offense. And so that's, I think, the roots of the West Coast offense came out of Tom Landry and Dallas Cowboys, not Fran Tarkenton. I don't have an original thought. I don't know where Tom Landry got it, but that was how it got to me.
My thanks to the East of the River Five-Town Chamber of Commerce and Fran Tarkenton for allowing me to share his presentation with all of you. For more information about the Five-Town Chamber, you can visit erc5.com. That does it for this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Thanks for watching or listening. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay well, and if you can, join me next week.